From the Jennings Communication Building on the campus of Dixie State University, this is Trailblazer Weekly, starring Carrick Segmeller and Drayson Ball.
Welcome inside the Jennings Communication Building on a Wednesday afternoon. Trailblazer Weekly is live alongside Drayson Ball. I am Carrick Segmeller, your hosts of the show each and every week, and we are excited to get things going. Episode 6 of the new year, believe it or not. We're about a month and a half into the show for the new year. Drayson, I can't believe that. It's flown by. 6 shows. We've already a couple football games in the books. Volleyball has played 8 matches already. Men's and women's soccer, they're all ready to start conference play, and it seems like just yesterday this thing was getting going, but here we are right into the thick of things with all of our sports.
No doubt about it. We're full into the swing of things. All these fall semester sports are getting going, and we were able to take a nice road trip out to Durango, Colorado this last weekend. Call the football game in which they won 23-14. We'll talk about that in just a minute, but yeah, these fall sports really are getting going.
Let's talk about volleyball first. We'll just jump right into our weekend observations. Women's volleyball team goes 1-3 at home at their Desert Garden Inn by Wyndham Classic. Then they go on the road to the Lubbock Christian Chaps Classic, and they go 4-0. They win all 4 games in Texas and sweep through it. Toa Faleo is your tournament MVP. Lauren Gamble, Megan Trainor end up on the all-tournament team. They dominated. One did not go past 4 sets in a single match in any of their 4 matches in Texas. I don't want to say they looked like a completely different team, Drayson, because we saw flashes of brilliance at the tournament here in St. George, but for the most part looked like a totally different team and looked like a team that is where it needs to be starting conference play this weekend.
Yeah, and I mean, there was never any doubt, at least in my mind, of what this team could become. I mean, we've seen countless times of what Robin Felder has been able to do with the volleyball program over the previous years. And like I said, those teams that were coming in the first tournament of the season, very, very good teams as well. But I think the Trailblazers, especially the volleyball team, was one of those teams that, you got to kind of work up to it a little bit. Robin Felder has a plan in place to where she's getting her best out of her players coming into RMAC play, which is going to come up this weekend as well. So I think there were really good spots between those 2 tournaments. There's good things and some bad things, but overall I think they've kind of figured some things out as they head into RMAC play.
And I like what you said, and it's history has shown that Coach Felder, that Robin Felder likes to play a tough preseason schedule. And so the 4 teams that they played here at home, very tough teams. And even the 4 teams that they played down in Texas, 3 of those 4 teams had a winning record in 2018. Almost all of them played in at least their conference tournament last year and were very successful. So those are 4 very good South Central region wins for this team that, come postseason time, come when you're trying to qualify for the NCAA tournament, that, obviously option 1 is to win the RMAC and you have the auto bid. But if that doesn't happen, you're going back and you're looking at these 4 wins in Texas. These could be huge right here. Quickly, before we transition to football, I want to talk specifically about this volleyball team. What was different between this weekend and the weekend before? Because you go back and you look at it, and like I said, it looks like 2 completely different teams. For me, it was their hitting percentage. Just vastly improved hitting percentage from the opening weekend. I'm going to give you the 4 hitting percentages from the opening weekend and then the 4 hitting percentages from this last weekend. Opening weekend, they go 156, 240, 209, 117. And then the 4 matches this last weekend, 266, 307, 224, 260. And in the match where they had the weekend low, 224, they held the opponent to a negative hitting percentage. So better defense, but also offense. I don't know if it's just a better focus or they worked on some things, but the hitting percentage was vastly improved from the week before.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that from the first tournament here in the Burns Arena that really stood out to me is just they didn't look quite sharp. Their passes or things like that, the digs that they normally get weren't quite there. I just think they may not have been in the best positions during that tournament, and obviously, had a few underclassmen, freshmen who were just barely coming in to learn the program, that kind of thing. They did not have TOA last weekend, so that was one of the main things that I think stood out to me. But yeah, definitely good job of rebounding and going and getting 4 good wins against a couple of tough opponents down there at Lubbock Christian.
volleyball team will open RMAC play this weekend. It's the South Dakota teams. Last year they made the South Dakota trip. South Dakota teams come to the Student Activity Center this weekend. Both 6 p.m. matches. Friday host Black Hills State. Saturday host South Dakota Mines. And we'll keep a close eye on those. And we'll actually have senior outside hitter and middle blocker Toa Faleo on the show a little bit later today, who, like we said, was named the tournament MVP. Her numbers were astronomical. Just incredible numbers for Toa in this last weekend. So we'll chat with her about that in just a little bit. Let's talk football. So volleyball goes 4-0. Let's talk football. Trailblazers go to Durango, Colorado, looking for that first win of the season. As Coach Peterson mentioned in a couple different interviews last week, he was looking to get rid of the bitter taste out of his mouth, to wash that out, to get on the win column. Drayson, through the first 30 minutes of football, you and I made the trip. We were there on the call for Radio Dixie 91.3 FM. Through the first 30 minutes of football, we thought that perhaps there was a chance that that bitter taste might not be rinsed out, might not be washed out. They turn it around, tale of two halves. Trailblazers scored 23 unanswered in the second half to win 23-14.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it was exactly the tale of two halves. It was really kind of bizarre the way that Fort Lewis played that second half. Coming into this game, we kind of thought, Fort Lewis was picked to finish last in the conference. This should be an easy win, at least on paper, for Dixie State. And maybe they went into it thinking that same thing, but I think Fort Lewis came out and they were really, really aggressive early on in that first half. They just became a little bit less aggressive in the second half. If we look at the first half numbers by the second half numbers, in fact, let's make this our Rock Canyon Bank by the numbers feature. Let's take a look at some of these numbers here. Dixie State, first half first downs, just 7 compared to 10 for Fort Lewis. The big thing for me was the third down conversion percentage. Dixie State in the first half, 3 of 8 compared to 5 of 9 for Fort Lewis in the first half. Second half, Dixie State was 4 of 9 on third downs. Fort Lewis was 0 for 6 on third down conversions. They did not convert a single third down conversion in that second half. Dixie State, the total yardage really was another thing, especially in the second half. Second half total yardage for Dixie State, 311. That is almost more than Fort Lewis gained the entire game. They had about 338 yards there, 328 yards of total offense. So really, I think Fort Lewis just got a little complacent, and we said it on the broadcast. It's almost as if they were just trying to run out the clock like a four-corner stall in basketball. They're up 23. They're up 14-0 at halftime. They really weren't that aggressive in the second half.
The weird thing was, and you mentioned this, is that they started doing that midway through the third quarter. It was like they had one drive. Dixie State went out, scored a touchdown on the first possession of the third quarter, marched down the field. Their longest drive of the game, I should say, scoring drive, 9 plays, and it culminates in a 37-yard touchdown pass from Cody Wilstead to DeJuan Dantzler. But Fort Lewis, after that, it was like Dixie State scored, and they said, "Uh-oh, here come the Trailblazers. They've scored. They're awake. Let's just start running the ball up the middle every time." I mean, they had been mixing it up in the first half, swinging it out to the right, swinging it out to the left, getting different receivers involved, and they kind of went away from that. And then when Dixie State eventually took the lead in the fourth quarter, it was panic time. We've got to try something, and they fumbled almost immediately. Of course, Dixie State fumbled the ball right back, but they were able to take advantage of that, score 23 second half points and to win that game. All very good stuff, and part of our Rock Canyon Bank by the numbers as well. I mean, Dixie State still to this point has not scored a first half point, and that connects right into that first half performance. When you look at Dixie State, even against CSU Pueblo in the first half, the Trailblazers had less than 50 yards of total offense in the first half against CSU Pueblo, and they were right around pushing 200, not quite right around there in the second half, but they performed better in the second half against CSU Pueblo than they did in the first. They lost that game, obviously, but over 2 games, second half team for this Dixie State team. I think that's going forward. You've got to find a way to start fast, put some points on the board, by halftime to take a little bit of that pressure off in the second half.
Yeah, and I think, what it really came down to against Fort Lewis was the more aggressive team really controlled the game, whether the first half or the second half. There's no doubt about it that Fort Lewis was definitely the most aggressive team in the first half, but the Trailblazers were obviously the more aggressive team in the second half. One other thing that I wanted to bring up as far as going, being aggressive, let's go back to that third down play in which they connected with Xavier Smith. Late in that game to go ahead. That was an aggressive play call, and I love the design of that. But that's a situation where you're rolling Cody Wilstead out to the right. You have a chance maybe for a sack, or you have to execute that play extremely well. And then later on, when he connected with Connor Miller on that crucial third down, we talked about it on the broadcast. There was a minute and a half left or so. The Trailblazers had run the ball the first 2 times and forced Fort Lewis to call 2 timeouts. They had 1 timeout remaining, and we said, hey, it's third down. It's 12 to go. Maybe run the ball. Get them. That's what I said, at least. Run the ball, force them to call their last timeout, and you said, hey, be aggressive, go win the ball game. They ran that pass play to Connor Miller, 72 yards for the touchdown. That's where it comes down to me. It was the aggression. The Trailblazers were more aggressive in the second half.
Yeah, that was a huge play in this game. And as I said on the broadcast the other day, I was that Madden player growing up that was just the button masher, and I would go for it on fourth down every time, never punted, run fakes whenever I could. And that's why I wouldn't be a very good football coach. But in this case, it worked because Fort Lewis was expecting the Trailblazers to just run it right up the middle again and have the Fort Lewis call the timeout, punt it away, about a minute left. Coach Peterson did not want to give the ball back to the Skyhawks. Brilliant play. Roll Wilstead out to the right. Find Miller, who got past the sticks, and I was telling him just to go to the ground because you got the first down, you can run the clock out. No, he scored a 72-yard touchdown to make sure that the Trailblazers would win that. That was one of many big plays for Dixie State in this game. We want to take a look at a couple of others. That was the difference in this game as well. You're talking about allowing big plays against CSU Pueblo last week, allowing long passes. Even in the first half against Fort Lewis, on a 3rd and 19, you allow a 41-yard touchdown pass. And again, on another third down later in the first half, you allow a second touchdown pass to go down 14-0. The impact of the big play was evident in this game, and Dixie State was able to strike for 37-yard touchdown pass, a 58-yard touchdown pass, and a 72-yard touchdown pass, not to mention the 50-yard catch and run that I think is overlooked because it wasn't a touchdown play, but it was actually Dixie State's field goal drive. You start 1st down and 10 from your own 4. Wilstead standing in his own end zone, and on 1st down finds Andrew Canelli Robles out of the backfield, who snuck out wide open middle of the field, catches the pass, runs to midfield, and that helps set up that field goal scoring drive. The impact of the big play was evident. Dixie State used the big play to their advantage instead of being hurt by the big play this week.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things, at least coming into the season, and especially against Colorado Pueblo, was the thing that was their Achilles heel. And I think if you can make those big plays on offense and then not give them up on defense, that's going to be critical going forward. With this offense of Coach Paul Pearson, that's kind of what he said he wanted to do to be able to, create those types of big plays. And I think with an explosive offense and the dynamic playmakers you have on the perimeter, that is what he's going to be able to do throughout the season. And I think the most important thing maybe that we saw with these big plays is that I think Cody Wilstead kind of stepped up and earned the starting position as the quarterback at the quarterback position. He seemed very, very comfortable in that second half and kind of really came into his own, finding open receivers and creating time for himself and extending plays by rolling out of the pocket. And he even created some first downs with his legs as well, just running on some broken plays or where maybe the coverage was a little bit good downfield. So, I think that's a few of the things that were really important for the Trailblazers to settle down in that second half. And, we talked to a few of the coaches after the game was over, and obviously they were relieved. They were happy they won, but it was almost like you could feel they were a little bit relieved and kind of maybe just some pressure had come off their shoulders. They got that first win as a new coaching staff. They made the plays they wanted to. They executed well down the stretch, and I think they really felt a little bit of weight had come off a little bit. And I think that will help them going forward, just to be able to kind of settle in now, get your offense going as you go forward in the season.
And a lot can be said for that, too. I think one more thing is we're running up toward the end of this segment. We got to do a couple things during the segment still, but there was another first and second and third in this game for the 2019 season as well. And that was Dixie State defense getting its first 3 takeaways of the year. The first one was, and what a better time to get the first one. Fort Lewis has second and goal from the 4. Jake Lowry, the quarterback, is rolling out to his left, trying to find a hole, trying to get into the end zone. And Alex Lilliard comes from the other side of the defense and runs from behind him, doesn't just sack him, but literally just takes the ball from him on the way to the ground and just rips it out of his hands. Dixie State gets it back. No, the Trailblazers did not score after that turnover, but it kept Fort Lewis out of the end zone. If that turnover doesn't happen, I believe Fort Lewis scores a touchdown. They go up 21-10, and you're seeing it right now on your screen. And this clip will cut a little bit toward the end for you TV and internet viewers, but as you see Alex Lilliard go to the ground, he rips the ball out right there. It keeps them out of the end zone. If the Trailblazers go down 21-10, they don't overcome that. And the second play, you see Darius Nash, game-sealing interception. There was also another fumble forced and recovered for Dixie State. 3 turnovers gained to 2 lost. They win the turnover battle. That was huge in this game.
Yeah, I mean, that turnover, that strip sack by Alex Lilliard, if they go up 21-10, the Trailblazers might not be able to catch him. It might be over at that point. So, yeah, really good job for them to kind of flip the script as far as those turnovers go.
Let's take a look as Dixie State winning this one 23-14, 23 unanswered. Congratulations to them. They will be at New Mexico Highlands this coming Saturday. We'll break that down in the next segment coming up. But we want to take a look before we wrap this thing up, Drayson. Obviously, you and I had the opportunity to make that trip. We road tripped it. We talked about it on the show last week. We road tripped it out to Durango, Colorado. And there you see Drayson and I, for you TV and internet viewers, after the game, that's, smiles on our faces. We're a little relieved as well. The Trailblazers win it 23-14. There's a couple landmarks that we pass on the way to and the way there. There's one of them right there. See, we made a quick stop at the 4 corners.
Had to stop at the 4 corners.
On the way back.
Got to spread your legs out and your arms out and be in 4 states at once. We had to stop there on the way back, of course.
We stopped there, and then a little further, the Glen Canyon Dam, right? Just outside of Page, over by Lake Powell. We hopped on a little ferry boat that was taking us around out in the water for a little while, and It was fun, a little sightseeing on the way home after the win.
Yeah, it was really good, especially coming home from a win, to be able to see a couple of those fun little landmarks and monuments on the way back. So always fun to do that.
Trailblazers winning it 23-14. Fun trip for Drayson and I. Last thing we've got to do in this segment, it's our Honolulu Grill highlights of the week. We started this last week. We're going to do it each and every week, and we have got some big plays. Let's go to that now. Our Honolulu Grill highlights of the week. Drayson, we'll start on the men's soccer pitch. Trailblazers trailing to Texas in their game, on Saturday. They're down 1-0 late in the match. Across into the box, Matt Lockwood goes up high and heads it into the goal. That would be the equalizer. The game would end at 1-1.
Yeah, and then you see Cody Willett here. This is the play we talked about, rolling out to his right. Finds Xavier Smith sprinting down the sideline, and he goes in. This was the go-ahead touchdown, by the way, to put him up 16-14. An excellent play design. I watched this back in slow motion. Really an excellent play design. Just quickly, it was a 2 wide receivers on the right side, man-to-man defense, and then a safety high over the top. The outside receiver ran a 15-yard deep route and a cut back in. His man and the safety attracted to him, while Xavier Smith's man was trailing behind him. He turned to the sideline and then got behind those 2 safeties and that cornerback that was guarding the other guy, and that was it. That was history.
Yeah, the one safety, the one player was expecting help from the safety. It did not come. Xavier Smith caught that ball, and the Dixie State would not relinquish the lead after that. It's our Honolulu Grill highlights of the week. We do it each and every week. We got to take our first time out. When we come back, Drayson and I will look ahead to Dixie State's matchup in Las Vegas, New Mexico, this weekend as they take on the Cowboys of New Mexico Highlands this coming Saturday. Quick break and right back on Trailblazer Weekly.
Radio Dixie 91.3. We don't play that. Nope, not that. A big fat no there. That's what we play. And stuff like that. On St. George's only alternative, Radio Dixie 91.3. Oh, and from 9 till midnight, we play this. I need a one dance. And this. Radio Dixie 91.3 FM.
For over a century, Dixie State University has been shaping the trailblazers of tomorrow by providing a culture of active learning, active life. With a paradigm of real-world experience mixed with cutting-edge technologies and rich traditions, we provide one of the most affordable educations in the West, set against the most stunning backdrop on the planet.
Today's show is brought to you by the Dixie State Campus Store, the official source for DSU Trailblazer clothing, providing students with textbooks, as well as educational, office, and art supplies. Located on the second floor of the Gardner Center, the Dixie State Campus Store, proud sponsor of Trailblazer Weekly.
A big shout out to the Dixie State Campus Store. Appreciate all they do for us on this show. And look for us going forward sometime throughout the year. We don't know when exactly, so can't tell you when, but we are going to be doing the show live from the Dixie State Campus Store before the semester is up. We're just talking to them about it, and they were excited about it. Aaron Meadows and his crew over at the Dixie State Campus Store. Appreciate all they do. Again, they're located on the second floor of the Gardner Center. So when you're over there, you can stop by. Go check them out. Lots of great stuff there. Lots of good stuff on tap here on the show on Trailblazer Weekly as we enter the second segment of the day, and it's time for our weekly football preview. Coach Peterson actually texted me today, Drace, and he said, hey, when are you going to have me on the show again? And I said, soon. Let's do it next week. So we have a couple games to talk about. So that's coming up as well. But good to know that he watches the show on a weekly basis, and he knows that he's not getting a phone call, and he's wondering why he's not on the show. He will be taking his crew to Las Vegas, New Mexico. About a 10-hour drive over to Las Vegas this weekend to take on the Cowboys of New Mexico Highlands. Let's quickly just we can take New Mexico Highlands at a glance, a quick look at the Cowboys and what they've done this year and what we can expect from them this season. Drayson, the Cowboys are 0-2. Somehow I missed the RMAC statement last week. It was before our game at Fort Lewis. They issued this statement on Thursday the 12th, I think it was, that the season opening game between New Mexico Highlands and Fort Lewis that had been called midway through the second quarter because of severe lightning and rain in the area. They just could not get that game in. Players were literally at the stadium from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. People had to run to the store. Coaches had to run to the store, get food, get snacks because they weren't planning on that. Well, Fort Lewis was up 7-0 when that game was finally canceled around 9 p.m. or whenever that was, and you didn't know for a couple days what was going on. Fast forward to a few days later. Apparently there's an RMAC policy that when a game is left unfinished, if the coaches agree on it, that they can count it as completed. So Fort Lewis was awarded that win. New Mexico Highlands loses against Adams State this last Saturday, so the Cowboys are 0-2 coming into this matchup against Dixie State.
Yeah, and we did get a little bit of more of a look from them last week as they took on Adams State, a team in New Mexico Highlands that was picked to finish 7th in the Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference this season in the preseason coaches poll. But, a team that I don't know really what we're going to expect from them as we, as we go to visit Las Vegas, New Mexico this weekend. They gained 375 yards of total offense, which at first glance you might think, that's not too bad, except when you consider they also allowed 569 yards on defense, so almost 600 yards of offense for Adams State in that game. And they're really missing a few key pieces there from last season that have graduated or have transferred from that defense last year that was pretty decent and gave Dixie State some trouble in last year's game. But yeah, I think a team that the Trailblazers expect to go on the road and be able to handle pretty well, but a team that you never know, they're always going to give you a game as we've seen in the series history.
Yeah, let's take a look at the Dixie State New Mexico Highlands series history, and it's a 3-game history. Dixie State leading it 2-1. I'm just going to go flat out say it. The Trailblazers should be leading this series 3-0. Game 1 was in 2016, season opener. C.J. Luongo and DeJuan Dantzler, believe it or not, were freshmen in this game, and that was the C.J. Luongo to DeJuan Dantzler halfback pass. That was the game winner to win 21-14. The next year, in 2017, in the Trailblazers' first and only trip so far to Las Vegas, New Mexico, Trailblazers lose that game 23-22. Doesn't tell the whole story, though. Dixie State with a 15-point lead in the second half, 22-7. In the fourth quarter, they lost 23-21. 22. There was a muffed punt involved that gave it back to New Mexico Highlands that set up the game-winning field goal. There was an interception thrown when Dixie State was driving back into Cowboys territory to try to complete a game winner of their own. I was on that trip. There was a very quiet ride back from Las Vegas, New Mexico on the bus. And I think that set some things into motion that year. Trailblazers only won 5 games in 2017, and that set a few things into motion where they were still reeling the next week when they went to South Dakota Mines, lost that game, and you just look back on that season and you go, we should have had 7 wins, maybe even 8 wins, but the tone was set with that tough loss to New Mexico Highlands in week 1. Last year, Trailblazers win at 28-23. In a back-and-forth game. So, if anything, Drayson, we've seen this series one to be very competitive and one where neither team or the other has really been able to run away with it and have a huge edge.
Yeah, and even last year's game, if you just look at the stats on paper, you might be scratching your head and say, how did Dixie State win this game? They were outgained in total yards. They were outgained as far as first downs were concerned. It was really that second half where the Trailblazers came alive and scored a bunch of their points late in that second half to kind of get that victory. But yeah, a series where certainly you could argue that this has been one of the more competitive series that the Trailblazers have had in their short history in the Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference. But a team that I think that you can go in and reasonably expect to be able to handle, as far as the Trailblazers are concerned. I think your offense is coming along now. We saw that in the second half against Fort Lewis. If you can get similar production like that from Cody Wilstead and from the other playmakers that you have on that offense, I think you can go in there and put up a lot of points against these guys. Adams State, put up 41 points against New Mexico Highlands last week. So I think something similar from the Trailblazers can be expected with this potent offense that we've seen just a little bit of from Ball Peterson.
Well, here's the thing. Dixie State, as Coach Peterson told us when we had him on the show, our first show of this new season, he said, we're ready to launch. We want to air it out. We're going to run the ball, but he's not shy about the fact that he wants to air it out. Last week against Adams State, New Mexico Highlands gave up 472 yards through the air and 5 touchdowns. Adams State has always been a pass-first team, so that's why they racked up so many pass yards. They throw the ball so many times. But Dixie State should be able to duplicate that and do something similar this week. We talked a little bit about what you can expect this weekend. You mentioned the defense and who's coming back and whatnot. But offensively, we don't quite know what to expect from Mexico Highlands either. A new quarterback in Gunnar Medford. So far this year, he's 12 of 35, or 190 yards and 1 touchdown. He was not at New Mexico Highlands last year. Division II Mercyhurst University back east. Cam Mosby, the starting running back, ran for 93 yards and a touchdown, as you pointed out during the break. One of those carries was a 66-yard touchdown run. That was all he did last year, and he's in limited action. The guy that you were game planning for 2 or 3 years against New Mexico Highlands, Dion Alston, who was a 1,000-yard rusher last year, he's finally, and yes, I say finally because he was an extremely talented running back, very good athlete, and Dixie State can breathe a sigh of relief that they don't have to go up against Dion Alston. The receiving corps, there's a few familiar faces, but not many. Devin Henderson, the tight end from last year, Darryl McIntyre, he's back. Other than that, all new. Most of them junior college transfers. Offensive line, there's a lot of returners. I don't necessarily know if they were starters last year, but they've started in games this year. The entire offensive line, if you go through that line, and most of those guys that are starting this year were on the New Mexico Highlands team last year and are familiar with the offense, and that may be where this offense starts, is up front on that offensive line, as it's the most familiar faces they have coming back.
Yeah, and like you said, I think just to summarize what you just said, is we don't really know a whole lot about the New Mexico State
What you're saying is I said
offense.
A whole lot of things, but we still don't know anything about
We still don't know a whole lot of thing
offense.
about their offense. In that game last week against Adams State, Gunnar Medford, 6 for 24 with just 87 yards and a touchdown. You mentioned Cam Mosby. If you take away the 66-yard run, he's left with 13 attempts and 32 total yards. In fact, there was a host of running backs that had about 20 to 30 yards. So, they're going to run the ball, but you don't really know who's the best running back and who's going to get the most carries, or if they're really that dynamic. If there's if you need a game plan for them specifically, I think they're just trying to figure out who they are as well offensively. But I think the Trailblazers, like we said, their defense has been really what's anchored them in the season so far. Against Fort Lewis, they were tremendous in the second half, limiting Jeff Hansen to limited carries and much fewer yards than compared to the first half. And I think if this defense can continue to do something like that against an offense who is struggling to figure out who it is so far this season, they're going to have a good chance.
Dixie State, New Mexico Highlands coming at you. New Mexico Highlands, 51 rush attempts, 46 pass attempts so far this season. So that's almost 50-50. So they're gonna do both. They're gonna run, they're gonna pass. Unfortunately, Drayson and I won't be on the road this week. New Mexico Highlands, we got some home soccer and some things got to stay home and attend to this weekend. Looking forward to getting back on the road a little bit later in the season. But you can find the link, DixieStateAthletics.com. Go to the football schedule, click watch. You can watch the game on Saturday, just like we will be. Also, stay tuned to at Dixie Athletics on Twitter. We'll have updates all throughout the game as well, and then the recap up as soon as we can with the final stats. So Dixie State and New Mexico Highlands on Saturday in Las Vegas, New Mexico. We've got to take our next break. When we come back, we transition back to the volleyball court. Senior Toa Faleo will join us. She was named the tournament MVP down at the Lubbock Christian Chap Classic. We'll talk to her about that and much, much more coming up next on Trailblazer Weekly.
I take the road less traveled, run free, unwind, unravel, someplace outside with lots to do. Green trees, red rocks, and don't forget that blue sky. The sunshine shining, sunshine pouring on me. Think I might just stay a while. Say hooray all day because the sun is gonna shine on me. Sun is gonna shine on me. Sun's gonna shine on me.
Awkward. I'm the awkward silence. You try to avoid me, then there I am again.
But an awkward silence can be a great thing.
Like Kelly here is about to demonstrate.
You haven't really been yourself lately. Are you okay?
Find out how you can help a friend with their mental health at seizetheawkward.org.
When I was your age, I was just like you, fascinated by stars. But now I get to search for life in the universe. And who knows, maybe life is looking for us too.
So we're like aliens to them?
Yeah. Does anyone want to be a scientist now?
I do.
Awesome. We need more girls in STEM.
Maybe we can find aliens.
Action!
Where do you find the titans of classical music in St. George? Classical music on Radio St. George, 100.3 FM. Where do you find the legends of jazz? Evenings on Radio St. George, 100.3 FM.
Hey, Bobo, do trees tell each other stories?
I'm sorry. I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, why don't we go find out? Listen.
Do clouds take naps?
I couldn't tell you.
Dad, do stars visit their friends?
Look!
Today's show is brought to you by Rock Canyon Bank, serving Utah businesses and agriculture for over 25 years, with locations in Pleasant Grove, Orem, Provo, Spanish Fork, Fillmore, and at 94 East Tabernacle, right here in St. George. Rock Canyon Bank, back to banking. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
Welcome back inside the Jennings Communication Building as Trailblazer Weekly marches on live on CEC TV, the Radio Dixie 91.3 FM station, as well as the Dixie State Athletics YouTube page, as we are joined by senior middle blocker and outside hitter, Toa Faleo. Toa, thanks so much for joining us on today's show. Let's talk a little bit about, just jump right in with a little bit about this, the LCU Chap Classic this last weekend, in which you were named the MVP, and rightly so. I mean, 48 kills, 41 digs, 5 blocks throughout the tournament over there in Lubbock Christian University. Just talk a little bit about what you were able to do over that 4-game tournament, and just kind of how you were able to bring home that MVP title.
Well, before the game, Coach gave me a pep talk because it was obviously my first game, and she just told me to go out there. I don't need to be an all-star, so I just went in. I knew what my job was, and it was just to help my team win, get kills, get some digs.
I mean, you certainly did that to a great extent. Let's talk a little bit about you mentioned coming in. This was your first weekend. You're jumping into your senior season at this point, and you're a 2-year transfer from Salt Lake Community College. You had a lot of success there. At your time there, as you transferred down here just last season, played a handful of games. In fact, 27 starts last year as a junior, and then of course this year is your senior season. What has it kind of been to come down from Salt Lake Community College as a transfer, get used to Robin Felder's system, now coming into your senior season, finally feel like you've gotten your feet wet? How has it been? Just kind of what are your expectations as far as this senior season goes, and what are your expectations going forward?
Well, it's been good. It's definitely different from JUCO. JUCO is just, I feel like, slower pace, so coming here was definitely a transition.
I mean, just talk a little bit about, what's, how has it been learning under Robin Felder? I mean, what kind of coach is she? I mean, we talked a lot about it earlier, how she kind of likes to bring in these tough opponents early, and then so you can kind of get ready for RMAC. Mm-hmm. What's it like just being in practice with Coach Felder?
It's awesome. I feel like Coach cheers us on and off the court all the time, so it's nice to have her there, like, as your coach and as your cheerleader, because she wants what's best for us.
We're chatting with Dixie State volleyball senior outside hitter and middle blocker, Toa Faleo. Toa, you kind of have that split position. You do a little bit of everything. It may be a dumb question, but I'm just going to flat out ask you, for you, what's more fun, getting up high above the net and slamming it down, or do you want to get the blocks? Obviously, I know what the stats say, but you're listed as both an outside hitter and a middle blocker when you need to be. So what for you is the most fun to get out there and do?
Definitely killing the ball is fun, but I'm not a great blocker, so when I do get a block, it feels awesome.
That's what I was going to say. Just tell the story there, and we see you get up high and blast that thing down there, which we saw you do over and over and over again in Texas. We're going to go back to that Texas tournament just a little bit. You go down there, and 4 tough opponents, and they're all South Central region opponents, so teams that you could possibly be playing in the NCAA tournament a little bit later. What kind of things was Coach Felder saying going into the tournament, into that round robin tournament last weekend, and what was she doing to get you all as a team mentally prepared to bounce back from a 1-3 start at home and then to get out on the road and to go 4-0?
Yeah, I think that's definitely what we had in mind the week before. So she kept saying redemption, and we all wanted to show that weekend before was not us, that we are definitely a way better team.
Of course, we mentioned a couple times, you're in your senior season, you come here as a junior last year and have a phenomenal year, second team All-RMAC, and just do a little bit of everything for Dixie State. And like I said, we've talked a little bit about it, but what were some of the biggest lessons that you learned last year in your first year transitioning? You mentioned some of the differences already between playing junior college and then playing at the NCAA Division II level. But what were some of the biggest things you learned last year in your first year in a Trailblazer uniform?
Definitely a lot. This year I have learned to pass better, just because I want to be able to be that person for my team, and just being a voice on the court, because I think that helps a lot, communication.
One of the things we like to ask a lot of our student athlete guests here as we continue to chat with Toa Faleo here on Trailblazer Weekly is how you kind of got into volleyball. I mean, was there maybe a friend or a family member, or was there maybe it was one of the coaches that kind of recruited you in high school to come play for the team, or what was it exactly that got you into volleyball and made it just so that you love this sport as much as you do?
Well, first I played volleyball, I think, in 8th grade, and I totally gave up on it because it just wasn't a sport for me, so I stuck to basketball. And then my aunt came down and she had a club team, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna try it and see how it goes from there. So I went and I fell in love with the sport again.
And what is it about volleyball? Maybe, I mean, I played baseball in high school, and I always reflect back on, some of the lessons that the sport taught me and some of the things that I've carried through to who I am today. What are the lessons that the volleyball can teach? I mean, maybe, give us a metaphor, maybe, I don't know, or something like that, or maybe something that you've learned from volleyball that you've kind of been able to carry with you through today.
I think there's definitely a lot of lessons you can learn, but one thing I've learned being in college is time management. To make friends with your teammates. They're your best friends, so you kind of have to be, but I love my teammates, so that's pretty easy. Another thing is,
I mean, gotta be a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of different things you can learn from every different sport, and obviously volleyball certainly teaches you a lot of those things. Talk a little bit about you're coming now up into Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference play just this weekend. You're bringing in a couple opponents. How has it been? I mean, is there any sort of extra maybe emphasis that goes into these Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference games because they do matter as far as the standings go? I mean, is it talked about much in practice, saying, all right, now these first two tournaments were kind of a quote unquote warm up. Mm-hmm. Now we go into RMAC play. Now we've really got to be able to, dot our I's and cross our T's and be united as a team. Is it anything like that, or is it just kind of business as usual and the opponent coming in is another opponent that we need to beat regardless of if they're in the RMAC?
Regardless of who we play, it's always just to win and do our job. I think Coach Felder has done a good job, like having those teams lined up for us, like the hard teams that we played before, so that we are ready when it does come to conference.
We're chatting with Dixie State volleyball senior Toa Faleo here on Trailblazer Weekly as the Trailblazers get set to open Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference play this weekend. And so we love talking to our student athletes and getting to know you just a little bit better. And that's why we ask about some of those early volleyball memories. You mentioned starting in 8th grade. And then thinking you wanted to play basketball at first, and you gave it another shot. What position did you play at when you were first starting to play volleyball and getting back into it? Were you outside hitter? Were you getting up and slamming the ball down? What position did you play, and what really was it that clicked that made you want to stick with it and play in college?
When I first started off playing, I was a middle blocker, and it was definitely hard. And then I played club volleyball, and my coach, Kim Norman, was like, no, you need to learn how to pass. Like, you're this huge girl. Like, you can't just be a middle blocker. You have to be more than that. And I was like, okay, I need to learn how to pass. So I think learning how to pass and just learning the basic skills, like, made me fall in love with it again.
And at what point did you realize that, you know what, I can get up high above this net and punish opponents, because that's what we're used to seeing happen around here? At what point did that start to come into play as your volleyball development occurred and as you got better and better and had colleges looking at you and you played at the junior college level and now here at Dixie State? When did that start to take place, to transition out to the outside?
I think it definitely didn't start until I went to Slick. So like after high school, I was like, wow, I just need to be confident and like go up there just to do what I do, I guess.
So is there a favorite? And I'm putting you on the spot here, but we always like to do this as well. Is there a favorite memory that you've had either through high school, so your first 2 years at Salt Lake Community College, your next 2 years here at Dixie State? Is there a memory? Maybe it was a game, a moment. Is there something that you can recall that is maybe one of your most favorite memories or experiences that you've had in your volleyball career?
I think my most favorite memory will probably be in high school. So my junior year, we played against Bingham and we lost to them in the semifinals. So we didn't get to play in that championship game. And then my senior year, we beat them in semifinals and we were able to play in the championship game. So that was fun.
It's always fun to get a little bit of revenge, I guess, if you will. Toei, it's been fun to watch you this last year, and then obviously coming into this season. Last year you led the team in service aces with 31 service aces, which I can't even believe that you can get 31 aces. I mean, that you just hit it and basically no one on the other team touches it. It's incredible to me. So congratulations on leading the team last season in service aces. They also were second in kills with 239. So definitely leading the team. What's it been like for you to kind of be, and now as a senior, kind of a leader on that team to say, hey, let's get together. I know obviously you've got Lauren Gamble and Megan Trainer and some of the other upperclassmen that you've been able to do that with. But what's it kind of been like for you as far as being a leader for that team?
I think it's definitely a huge role. I don't think of myself as a leader, but I think actions speak louder than words, so I try and help my team by doing that.
Just a couple minutes left here with Toa Faleo here on Trailblazer Weekly. So I've got your player bio pulled up here on the website, and I just see a couple of things that I'm not sure how that works out. It says favorite team is the Golden State Warriors, but it says your favorite athlete is Kobe Bryant. Now, how does that work out? You got Warriors and Lakers. How does that work out? How do the Golden State Warriors end up, in all seriousness, being your favorite sports team?
I'm from California,
Okay.
and I guess my family's just a huge Golden State Warriors fan. Steph Curry, of course, but Kobe Bryant has always been my favorite. Just the way he plays, yeah.
Well, if there's someone to model your game and your work ethic after, as far as a professional athlete, he's definitely a very good example to follow there. I just saw that there and just had to ask, Lakers, Warriors, how's that all working out? But Toa, thanks so much for stopping by the studio today and joining us on Trailblazer Weekly. It's one of our favorite things to be able to get to know our student athletes a little bit better and have those watching and listening be able to get to know our student athletes as well, because honestly, that's what college athletics is all about, and at every level, about those that are putting in the work and competing out there. And we really admire what you all do out there on the court. So best of luck this weekend and going forward.
Thank you.
We got to take our final timeout. When we come back, we will look ahead to this weekend and wrap up the show and review a few of our main topics from a little bit earlier in the show. We'll also name our Campus Store Player of the Week. Final break, and come back to put a bow on the show on Trailblazer Weekly.
1 in 3 adults has pre-diabetes. 1 in 3. That means it could be you, your favorite brother, your other brother, you, your football buddy, your football buddy, you, the boss's boss. If 1 in 3 adults has pre-diabetes, that means it could be you, your barber, your barber's barber.
Nice work. Thanks.
You, your plumber,
Breathe right into your foot.
your plumber's masseuse.
Yes.
You, your dog walker,
On your left.
your cat jogger. Or you, your co-pilot, your co-pilot's co-pilot. While 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes, with early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. Take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org to know where you stand.
Today's show is brought to you by Honolulu Grill, bringing you a variety of Hawaiian and other Polynesian foods. Honolulu Grill's unique tropical taste will leave your mouth watering for more. Located at 706 700 South in St. George. Honolulu Grill. Come feast with us.
Welcome back inside the Studio A in the Jennings Communication Building in the campus of Dixie State University. Trailblazer Weekly, live on a Wednesday on CEC TV, Radio Dixie 91.3 FM, and the Dixie State Athletics YouTube page. Carrick Segmiller alongside Arizona and Colorado tourist Drayson Ball. We made our trip to Durango, Colorado last week.
New Mexico.
New Mexico.
Don't forget New Mexico.
And Utah. I mean, how many different states were we in last week? We stopped by the Four Corners and the Glen Canyon Dam on the way, and you saw those pictures earlier in the show. If you missed it, you're going to have to go back and watch that first segment. But big shout out to all of our sponsors who help us keep this show going. Rock Canyon Bank, Dixie State Campus Store, Honolulu Grill. Appreciate them as we wrap the show up each and every week here in this final segment of the show. But it was a fun trip that we took to Durango last week. Fun to get out on the road to call the football game. And Dixie State was able to come back and win that football game, which made it even more enjoyable. We were talking about it after the game that, man, that would have been a long drive to lose and then have to turn around and come back. But obviously that's part of the job sometimes. But Trailblazers got it done. That wasn't a problem. We got to talk about a lot of good stuff about, hey, what could they have done differently in the first half, and what was different about the second half, and even still, what can they do differently going forward to make sure that those slow starts don't happen.
Yeah, it was a fun trip, and I'm glad that you were able to stay out of the hospital as you were driving back the majority of the way. You didn't have cruise control in the car, so I know it was your
leg was going to fall off.
Your leg and your calf. I thought you were going to have to go to the hospital the way you were complaining about it the whole trip.
Who knew that cruise control is not a standard option from a rental car anymore? There's a certain size of car. I think it's like minivan and up. It's just automatically included. Like what? If you got to drive more people, you automatically get cruise control?
Why? We had leather seats in that car.
The buttons were on the steering wheel, but they would not activate.
I couldn't believe it. Leather seats normally you have to pay extra for. We had them in our rental car, but no cruise control. I couldn't believe it, but I'm just glad you're okay.
Now I know. Now I know. My ankle, my calf, my hamstring. I mean, it's a long drive. We were on the road for 7 hours, and I had to have that thing punched to the floor the whole way, you know?
And
a little workout in.
You didn't let me forget about it the entire way there or back. So I'm just glad you're okay.
Next time you need to book a rental car, and it's a small car, make sure that you request cruise control. Because it won't be there as just a standard option.
I think what helped is that we had a big old bag of peanut M&Ms that we could snack on the way there and back. So I think
we won't talk about how many I ate. It was a big bag, and Drayson went looking for some M&Ms, and it was almost empty. So fun trip to Durango. Even more fun by the fact that Dixie State won that football game, Drayson, 23-14. We broke it down earlier in the show. That's what we're here to do on this last segment of the show, is kind of look back and look at some of those main points. And we also obviously talked about it was a tale of two halves. Dixie State trailed 14-0. And I kept saying this on the broadcast because it was I found it kind of hilarious. And we talked about this last week on the show, is that in 2017, when Dixie State went to Durango, they trailed by 2 touchdowns and had not scored at the half. In 2017, the score was 13-0 in favor of Fort Lewis at halftime. What happened? They came out, Trailblazers did, rattled off 23 unanswered points and won 23-13. Well, what happened on Saturday? You go into the locker room trailing 2 touchdowns. You haven't scored yet, so you're down 14-0. And you rattle off 23 unanswered points and you win 23-14. It was, deja vu moment, as Coach Peterson put it, although not deja vu for him because he wasn't around for that. But definitely a tale of two halves. We talked about, Cody Wilstead finding a rhythm, finding his receivers. He likes to mix it up and get it to everybody out there. And Dixie State went full-on air attack in the second half to come back and really to surprise a Fort Lewis team that was expecting to just be able to run the clock out in the second half.
Yeah, and the other thing, we talked a little bit about this in our first segment in our Rock Canyon Bank by the Numbers feature. The time of possession was another one that was really baffling to me. That was the thing coming from the Pueblo game 2 weekends ago. The Trailblazers were just dominated in time of possession. It was almost a 2-to-1 ratio or a 3-to-1 ratio. It was about 40 minutes for Pueblo and 20 minutes for the Trailblazers last 2 weekends ago against Pueblo. Last week, very, very similar numbers in the first half. 20 minutes almost of time of possession for Fort Lewis to just 10 minutes for the Trailblazers. So again, a 2-to-1 comparison there. And one of the things we said on the halftime show there was the Trailblazers have to be able to turn the time of possession into their favor. They didn't do that, but surprisingly, they were able to score 23 points, like you said. The time of possession in the second half was about even at about 15 minutes, give or take a few here or there, but the Trailblazers did lose the time of possession battle in the second half by about 10 or 15 seconds. So it was one of those things, and I guess it's not surprising because Fort Lewis was really just content to run the ball in that second half from the middle of the third quarter on. And that's really where the time of possession went, but it didn't turn out to be a big factor for Dixie State because they had a lot of big plays and 58 and 72-yard touchdowns to Xavier Smith and Connor Miller, and that's really why the time of possession was so lopsided, but a big key in that game.
Well, it just makes you wonder the further that you get into this season, and next time we have Coach Peterson on the show, I'd love to ask him about it. But, with the pace this offense goes, even when you have a quote-unquote extended or prolonged scoring drive, i.e., for example, the scoring drive that opened the second half when they went 9 plays down the field and scored the first touchdown to cut the lead to 14-7, that drive only took just over 3 minutes. So it's a 9-play drive, just over 3 minutes, and that may very well be one of the longest scoring drives of the year. I think you're going to see the 60 State team go fast. They're going to have 2 or 3 or 4 plays scripted. They're going to get back up to the line, and they want to get at it and go again. So even when the 60 State team is moving the ball and not going 3 and out, I think you're going to see short possessions and get in to the end zone. I've thought about it over the weekend. I was still thinking about it, and you want to see that time of possession creep up. Yes, you can't be 40 minutes of your defense on the field like you were against CSU Pueblo and just under that against Fort Lewis. You can't do that. You've got to give your defense a rest. But this team is going to go fast, and when they score, they're going to score fast, and that time of possession still may not be, half and half at the end of the football game.
And call it live or die by the high tempo offense, the up tempo offense. That really bit them in the butt, so to speak, against Pueblo a couple weekends ago. They had drives that were 3 plays 40 seconds, 3 plays 59 seconds, 3 plays 48 seconds. Just really quick turnarounds. I mean, if you're a defensive player, you get off the field, you have time to sit down, take 1 sip of water, and you're back out either on special teams as a punt return, as the punt team, or on defense just normally after 60 seconds, maybe a minute and a half. And I think that's really what their limitations were against Pueblo a couple weekends ago. Last week was a little bit better. You cut that time of possession down just a little bit. But I think the key to this offense is executing on your offensive possessions. When you are able to do that and move the ball effectively, I think it negates the fact that your defense has to be on the field for so long. If you can put up points, get first downs, and extend drives, I think it really negates the time of possession difference that we're going to see if they're scoring quickly within 2 to 3 minutes per possession.
Well, this is a very well-conditioned Dixie State football team. You saw that during fall camp. You saw that, the first few weeks of the season at practice. I mean, they're constantly working on that. They know that they're going to go fast. So it's not just the offense, it's the defense. They got to be conditioned as well because they know that they're probably going to spend more time on the football field. But Dixie State wins that one 23-14. Congratulations to Coach Paul Peterson and his staff on their first win as a staff. They'll have New Mexico Highlands either noon or a 1 kickoff this Saturday, and then they'll be able to turn around and get home. And then one more road game in Rapid City, South Dakota, a week from Saturday to wrap up the 3-game road swing. 1 o'clock kickoff at New Mexico Highlands on Saturday. Volleyball team, Drayson, goes 4-0. We just had Toa Faleo on the show. She was a tournament MVP, and very fitting. She is also this week our campus store player of the week.
Yeah, I mean, she was phenomenal, and it was really fun to get to talk to her, to kind of see her background and her history coming into being a volleyball player here at Dixie State. And she was just absolutely tremendous last week in that LCU Chap Classic. We mentioned it when we talked to her. 48 kills, 41 digs, 5 blocks. I mean, she deserved the MVP title from that LCU Chap tournament last weekend, and of course, obviously, she was the standout candidate for this week's Campus Store Player of the Week. Congratulations to Toa Faleo for that, for a tremendous weekend of volleyball. They are back in action this Friday at 6 p.m. right here in the Student Activity Center, so make sure you come down and watch the volleyball team continue to hopefully excel throughout this early part of the season and going into Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference play.
Double-digit kills for Toa in 3 of the 4 matches, and in the one where she didn't quite get a double digit, she was at 8 kills. So dominating performance for Toa Faleo. Congratulations to her and the Dixie State volleyball team with new life now at 5-3 and ready to rock and roll with 2 matches that you feel very confident that you can emerge from this weekend at 7-3 and continue to build on it. Conference play, it's a brand new season. So Coach Felder and her players are saying, let's go, bring it on, and we're chasing a second consecutive RMAC championship and a ring. So that'll do it for today. So Dixie State athletics, ton of stuff on the docket again this weekend. Men's soccer, women's soccer, and volleyball all at home this weekend, although thank goodness, not like the first weekend, they're not all at the same time. They are spread out. You'll have volleyball and soccer on Friday, and then and volleyball again on Saturday, and then 2 soccer matches on Sunday, and then football on the road. So a full slate of Dixie State Athletics. Check out DixieStateAthletics.com, as well as follow us on Twitter at Dixie Athletics for all the updates. Also, be sure to follow this show at DSU Blazer Weekly for all the updates on the Twitter machine. Big thanks to Sean Dinovan back in the Radio Dixie 91.3 FM studio, and for all our CEC TV crew for helping us out. Great students, great staff. Wouldn't want to be working with anyone different. For Drayson Ball, I'm Carrick Sagmuller. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. However you were tuning in today, we thank you for that. Go Trailblazers. Catch you next week.